whether you're a 2.0 student or a 4.0 student, that data point has zero standing on your outcome.
It's like judging an eagle by how good it can swim.
What does the world need? What are you good at? What do you love? And then what can you get paid for?
You never know who you're going to be rubbing shoulders with, what opportunities are going to present themselves.
Everything is built from is your social capital, right? So it's the people you know, the people you surround yourself with, and data that you can pull from to make educated choices.
Just because you have a 2.0 doesn't mean you're a loser. Doesn't mean you're not going to go anywhere. It just means that traditional academics maybe isn't for you, but there's other things that you are good at. You just got to find out what those are.
If you're thinking about a career in the trades, and you want to know what employers actually look for, what the work is really like, and what nobody tells you before you get started, you're in the right place. Built in the Midwest features conversations that'll help you figure out if this path is for you.
Well, I'm super excited today to have the one, the only, Trent Bellinger, joining us today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So Trent is the Delta Schoolcraft ISD CTE director. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So tell me about that, on kind of what drew you to that CTE leadership. Was it always something you were passionate about?
So career and technical education really wasn't afforded to me in high school. It was available, but wasn't really communicated. So I just wanted to first tell everybody what CTE stands for. So when I was in high school, my parents were non-college graduates. So the pathway to success was just college, right? So my dad owned a welding company, very successful, but that wasn't what I was told to do. But I had a welding background, right? So I went to community college. Then my dad's like, well, hey, you're not going to own this shop. We want something better for you. So go and do something else in college. So I said, okay, well, I know welding, so I can teach welding, right? So went to community college, went to Central Michigan University, found a way. I didn't even realize that career tech was a thing. So in order to be a career and technical education teacher, you have to have 4,000 hours of industry experience. So what set me apart when I was in college from my peers was that I had that 4,000 hours of industry experience from working in my dad's company.
Already.
So
college.
I'm a unicorn. So
yeah.
And that's not to pat myself on the back. Just like people like me don't exist.
But it's true. Yeah.
I had a degree in industrial education, and I had the CTE certification, so I could go teach at a career tech center. So I went and I was a welding teacher. I grew up downstate, and never wanted to live downstate after growing up there.
No. So as someone from downstate as well, I was excited to be in the UP, yep. And once you get a taste of the UP, you don't want to go anywhere else.
I flew to Alaska and checked out some schools in Alaska and thought I wanted to go to Alaska. It turns out I don't like Alaska. I don't want to live in Alaska. And my wife wanted to live in Chicago, so here we are. So I taught welding here for 8 years, and then moved into administration. I kind of always knew that was where I wanted to go. I like creating things. We'll talk about this later, I'm sure. But I found out what skills I had, what things I was good at, and then what career advancement that could get me into. And my pathway was CT welding teacher, CT supervisor, and then CT director.
But to go from all that experience in welding, and going back to that, I think it's really interesting because I was in a very similar boat. Not with welding, but the college push, and there wasn't a focus on CTE, there wasn't a focus on the trades, and just went to the conference, Mark Perna at the Bay College the other day. It was fantastic. But anyway, something that he said is there's not always talking about college ready, but talking about career ready, getting people career ready, and understanding that there's a lot of different kind of paths to success. And something you mentioned, I read in an article a while back where you had talked about that when you were growing up, CT was never pushed. Why do you think that is? Why was there just such a very laser focus on one path and not on any of these other paths?
I think that the economy has shifted over time. Then we needed to have a degree. Like for my job, I have to have a degree, or I have to be able to get into a degree.
Yep.
So that was seen as the path to success. Like I said, my parents didn't go to college. My mom was a secretary at Michigan State University. My dad owned his business, mildly successful. My mom was successful in her job, but they didn't think that their jobs were good enough for us. I have multiple uncles who worked at GM, and that was never even afforded an option for me. Even though they had beautiful houses and all the toys, like that was never going to be good enough. So the path to success, to not having to have or to ever worry about money, was college. It worked out well for me. Worked out well for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But our paths were never straight to our final destination.
No,
I'm not even in my final destination.
Exactly. You're still on.
We're going to go different ways. So I think that was seen as a couple things. I think it was, for me, helped me grow up. I was not ready to directly enter the workforce. Even I worked for my dad. I could have directly entered the workforce, but my life would have just been a little differently because I was not ready. So I think a lot of times college can be viewed, or was viewed as from our parents, as a time to mature, a time to fill that toolbox that you didn't have filled, which CTE could have helped fill for me in my high school. I just I knew it was there, didn't know what it was, literally in my own high school. But also too, I think that it just helps. The idea of going to college was a way to fill toolboxes for people, and now we realize that how those toolboxes can be filled for everybody looking for jobs can be done in a variety of ways, whether it's work-based learning, whether it's career and technical education, whether it's programs like yours. Sometimes it's college, sometimes it's a blend of all of that. So I think we moved from that's the only way to now there's a lot of different ways to success. And you mentioned that Mark Perna too. He had a lot of great points that I heard, but one of them was whether you're a 2.0 student or a 4.0 student, that data point has zero standing on your outcome.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be you're not going to be a failure for 2.0, and you're not going to be a success for your 4.0. It's what you have outside of that's going to get you there.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was just a really cool way to say, tell those kids who are like, I'm not right for college, or hey, I'm going to go do this. Is like, no, there's more to you than your grade point average.
Absolutely. It's like judging an eagle by how good it can swim.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense. And no, that point with him really resonated with me because I've seen that firsthand where people have a hard time reading and writing, or maybe they have really bad dyslexia and they nearly failed high school. And yet now they're entrepreneurs doing really well, owning their own trucks or doing whatever they're doing. And it's like, just that alone, that traditional academics, isn't a good scale for everybody across the board. And I've seen different successes. Mike Dombrowski talked about that. He's like, I knew right away I wasn't for college. I'm not the college guy. My counselors told me that. And he's like, I had to figure out a different path kind of thing. And you look at, what he's done and what he's built. It's just amazing that and I think it's important to recognize that. Like, just because you have a 2.0 doesn't mean you're a loser. Doesn't mean you're not going to go anywhere. It just means that traditional academics maybe isn't for you, but there's other things that you are good at. You just got to find out what those are, right? And maybe it's not bookwork per se.
And I think too that one of the things that everything is built from is your social capital, right? So it's the people the people you surround yourself with, and the data that you can pull from to make educated choices, right? So a lot of people, if they come from a small community, they don't have a whole lot of people to draw references from, to know what they can do once they get into a career field. I taught welding, and so everybody I want to be a welder. Okay, great. What does that mean? I want to go weld. But once you get into a facility, your paths, really broaden. But one thing that college, I think, was seen as a networking opportunity.
Sure.
I just don't communicate with anybody that I knew in college right now, but some of those connections helped me get my first job.
Yep.
So I think that's seen that's how you're going to find people who will get you where you want to go. But nowadays, I don't feel like an old man saying nowadays.
Yeah.
But nowadays, people, high school students specifically, people are looking for them in high school.
Yep.
Like they're coming to recruit them to come work for them in high school.
So
there's not that necessarily a need for that sense of networking that comes from college.
And I feel like high school students nowadays, to an extent, this is just my opinion, but they're getting a lot more networking than I ever did. I mean, I felt like I graduated high school and it was like, get out of here, we're done with you kind of thing, have a good life. And nowadays, I feel like, I look at all the different career fairs that are in high school. 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. We were just at a career quest downstate. It was all 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. And there was hundreds of different careers there that people talked about. And I'm like, I don't ever remember anything like that in high school. So they're getting that networking now and introducing themselves to people like they never have before.
And that's what I think industry folks who engage with kids are getting the kids. And I think the industry is understanding that, So locally we do, let's start with the youngest and go up. So we do 5th grade Fridays with fifth graders go to Bay College and they just experience a bunch of different classes and courses and things like that. So, for example, my daughter, she's in 5th grade and she wanted to be a teacher. My wife and I both started as teachers, and we're like, "Oh God, don't be a teacher." So we were looking for
like
ways,
your parents,
exactly,
pushing them to do something else.
Yeah, we're the same thing.
You're pushing your kids to do something else.
We're just as bad.
The irony there, that's funny.
So I was like, "Oh God," but I can't tell her that. So somebody else has to tell her that. So she went through this 5th grade Friday, went into the microbiology lab, and she's like, "I want to do microbiology." I was like, "Okay, I don't know what that is." Kind of like the Mark Perna example.
Yeah.
But it probably sounds better than teaching.
Yeah.
Not that teaching's bad. It's just I want her to be the next level of better than us, which was what my parents wanted.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what that's going to look like.
You want your kids to do well and thrive. Absolutely.
Right. So now she came back with, maybe I can teach biology. I was like,
Yeah.
But so I haven't won yet. But, so we do 5th grade Fridays, and then we do for 7th graders we do Mind Trekkers, which is a Michigan technical education. Michigan Tech opportunity. And I think you guys participate.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So that's where we bring in Michigan
cool.
Tech. We don't do it. The Mind Trekkers organization brings in all that, and they do STEM-based activities to try to help engage kids with what careers can then be related to those STEM activities.
Absolutely, and it's all hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're getting down and dirty and all these different things, and it's and young people love hands-on stuff. I think that just keeps them engaged.
Right, and part of it is the Michigan Career Development Model. So there's a whole model of how to develop careers created by the Department of Education. Is kids can't be what they can't see, and STEM is kind of one of those hidden things. Like, okay, what's STEM? So it's microbiology. Well, what jobs can you get in microbiology? So it's all those things. So what that Mind Trekkers does is it helps. Every activity has jobs and careers that are tied to it, so they can be like, well, what's that? And then they can hopefully go and explore more of that. Or the person who's running maybe a student at Michigan Tech who's a near peer can then explain, oh, this is what that job looks like because I'm studying it. Or the person from Midwest Truck Driving School can talk about what the job is that they're talking about right there.
Exactly.
So whoever's there. So that's 8th to 7th grade, and then for the high school students, we operate. The ISD helps run 2 career fairs, one at Glaston High School for the kind of the eastern side of the districts, and then we run one at Escanaba for the western side of the districts.
It's amazing. I think we had a booth there, and there had been over 100 people. I mean, it was amazing. With the different. All the different jobs and the different careers, and what's cool about that is you hit a little bit of everything there. There was military there if they're interested in that. There was different college programs there. There was trade schools there. There was jobs right out of high school. But something that you said that's pretty profound that I haven't heard before. But kids can't be what they can't see, and I think that's huge, right? And so I think by having those big events, it really opens up their eyes, and that way they can explore these different careers. Because I'll be honest with you, like talking about linemen, if you were to ask me when I was a senior in high school what a lineman was, I would have been, is that a foreign word? Or, I would have to Google that.
Right.
Because I didn't know what it was. And so it was never even a thought in my mind that I could be a lineman because it wasn't even a term that I understood, a career that I understood. And so I think that's fantastic. So what other events?
Yeah, so we do that. And then so through CTE, I have a picture. I think something I want to talk about on my phone. That's my phone. So some other events we talk about. Once we get into CTE, we reach about, within the 2 counties, we have about a quarter of the students, high school students, in CTE classes. So we only offer 8 CTE classes. So what we tell students is, when you come to our class, maybe you'll take a combination of machining and welding, let's say, for example. Maybe you won't be a machinist, maybe you won't be a welder, but like in the case of Mike Dabrowski, he was a former student of mine. Like, he's taking those machining skills and the skills and those welding skills that he learned through CTE, and he's using them every day.
He welds all the time.
I know.
I follow him on Facebook and stuff. I think he just welds to weld.
Right, so it's about like filling those toolboxes of things that kids can do. So through that, and then as we have the local schools all do work-based learning as well. So that's one of the things that's nice. So we offer 8 programs here in Delta County for CTE. But if there's a kid let's say he wants to do, we try to figure out how to do a lineman program. We talked about an insurance program. We've talked about culinary. So are there other ways that we can do that? A lot of schools do work-based learning. If there's not a CTE program offered, let's say for cosmetology, right? So I know Gladstone had a student who did a work-based learning program in cosmetology, had a registered apprenticeship through DOL to do that. So there's opportunities for kids to, again, because those employers are seeing a value in those kids, that untainted talent or potential talent,
absolutely,
to invest in. So there's all different types of paths that the kids can take, whether it's CT, whether it's college, whether it's apprenticeships, all kinds of things.
It's huge, and something, I don't know if you want me to say this, but something I've seen, and you even let your students go out and take trade school programs and everything's kind of during high school, because you recognize, like, all right, they're already thinking about these careers, they want to get into these careers. You know what? We can do this. We can do this and make it happen. Their senior year of high school, to be able to talk about a jump start, getting into it. And even I've noticed even a lot more people even dual enrolling. I've just met someone the other day that was dual enrolling at Bay College. When they graduated high school, they also graduated Bay with their associate's degree. And I'm like, what? Like, talk about getting. I mean, that's like I took like 4 years to get a 2-year degree, but that's like getting a 4-year jump on me. Like that's huge.
Yeah, and that's that's a double-edged sword. That's where I was before this. Was at a Bay College meeting about dual enrollment.
Oh, really?
So it's a double-edged sword because those kids are leaving with all those skills, but they're kids. You know? So which is great that they're ready to go, but like. I sometimes I just concerned about what are we doing when we have a senior that's graduating with 60 college credits, and then they graduate the next level early. I just want to make sure that their toolbox is full again, or that their social capital is built, that they know what to do because they're still young.
Absolutely.
So we're asking these kids as the boomers age, we're asking these young kids to fill those voids, but like we're asking them to do a lot, when they're young.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And talking about the toolbox, something I just saw on Facebook the other day, but you guys built a house. You guys built a house. Like, and I think about, I have a hard time cutting 2x4, because I never went through a shop class or even a chainsaw class. None of that. The skill sets that they're learning, where these kids can literally come out and they can renovate their houses, they can build homes. Talk about that project and what they're learning to be able to do something like that.
Yeah. So the kids they poured the footings and finished everything. So when we do the house, the kids, they typically spend a little bit of time learning how to do the task, so how to finish concrete. Then they'll go set up the forms for the footings and then pour it. And then they'll go back to the classroom and learn how to do cement block, and then go and do the crawl space or
that's
base
awesome.
or whatever.
Yeah.
So and everything up to that. So when we did the house, we also, our teacher is a fantastic resource, but we also brought in some local professionals, so like Master Electric, Hiawatha Heating and Cooling, St. John Drywall, EJ&S Concrete, C4 Concrete. They all came in and worked right directly with our kids to make sure that they did it right.
Yeah.
So like our kids hung the drywall, St. John Drywall came in and helped us finish it. The kids got to participate in that.
And actually learn from a contractor that's doing it every single day, understands everything.
Yep. So it's nice to bring in those local experts. Again, it's increasing the kids' social capital, but then those employers who are contractors are like, oh, I want that kid.
Yeah. Okay, so it's almost, it's multi kind of factorial there with the benefits that they get out of this, because they can utilize this. So like Mike Dombrowski, he's welding every single day on his stuff. He breaks a lot of stuff, and so he's got to fix it and weld it. He's not going to mind me saying that. And he does push his stuff right to the limits. He really does. But and that helped him grow his own business and build his own business. And then you have all these people that can do it kind of personally in these skill sets. And so that's one thing that people talk about now is like people go through all of their high school and they don't learn how to change a tire or build a house or weld or have any real skill sets. And I think that's huge. What you're teaching them actual skill sets that they can use for their entire life, and I think that's so impactful. And part of me is actually really jealous because I never got to do any of that. Right. And so
it's interesting too when we one of our requirements for state approved CTE is we have to do what are called follow-up calls. So we call every graduate a year after they graduate just to see what they're doing. I wish we could do it 5 years later, because 1 year after high school, not everybody's figured it out yet, right? So, but it's always amazing. We have a really high rate of students who either directly into the workforce, directly go into a youth apprenticeship or on-the-job training, or some type of post-secondary education. And we also, those kids we actually had a kid break the algorithm this year because they only let us put in $30 an hour as the highest earning wage, and they had a kid making $38 an hour a year out of high school, and he's a lineman, not working at a data
awesome.
center. But so it's really amazing that
Wow.
we get to see that data. But like I said, I would really like to see it 5 years later, to see when they've grown up a little bit more, and see
Absolutely.
where they found themselves, and again how that path wandered along the way. Because I'm guessing probably 90% of them didn't go a straight shot. I'm sure it's wandered.
No.
So
I'd say the majority of people, if
Right.
they're like me or you, it sounds like
Right,
you kind of weave, but you always make forward progress.
right, and that's what I want to show you. So I got to get a picture up here so I can talk about it intelligently.
Yeah.
But so there's this theory, this Japanese theory called Ikigai, and what it is it helps the Japanese tell their people how to find a vocation, right? So it's this like Venn diagram of different things. So the first one is find out when you're looking to see what you need to do. Find out what does the world need. So what are some careers that the world that's growing? So like Michigan does the Hot 50, right? So what are these Hot 50 jobs by 2030 or whatever it might
Sure.
be? So then we tell students move over to number 2, which is find out what you're good at. So it says explore and develop rare and valuable skills that make the world better, become so good that they can't ignore you. So like that's how can we communicate to kids that first of all, what does the world need? So forget about what do you want to do.
Yep.
Focus on what does the world need, then what are you good at, and then 3, what do you love? Because we're told, like, let's say, I don't know what your hobbies are, but let's say you like dirt biking.
I like to snowboard.
Okay,
I'm a
so
big
that's
snowboarder.
exactly. So
Yeah.
who's going to pay you to snowboard? Maybe you're really good at it, but probably not.
Probably not.
So who's
No,
going to pay you to do
no.
that? But what are those skills that you're good at, that you love? So let's figure out what does the world need? What are you good at? What do you love? And then what can you get paid for? So so if we unpack, let's say snowboarding, right? So you've got some agility, right? You like being outside. You don't.
I
mind
love
being,
the outside.
You don't,
I love the
you don't mind
outdoors.
being cold. You have stability. You probably have some good core strength, right? So those could be like, okay, I can be a good manual labor person.
Yeah.
I always talk about like hunting, right?
I could be a good lineman, I think.
Right, exactly. Look at that.
It's not too late for me to change. I'm still thinking
Right,
about it.
because we often get that bad advice that find a vocation that you truly love in your life will be a permanent vacation. Well, like I like hunting. No one's going to pay me to hunt because I'm not good at it.
No.
But again, what are those things that I like doing? I like problem solving. I like exploring. I like planning. I like all those things.
So really unpack that to
right.
understand it. And then what else is in that same kind of wheelhouse per se, as far
Right.
as those things that you like about
Right.
that.
So then the last thing, the step is what can you get paid to do, right? So take all those things. What will someone pay you for? So when people ask me like, how did I did I ever see myself when I was young being leading a school? And I would have said, no, that's crazy. Why would I want to do that? But what I did is I figured out what was I good at. I was good at those things of planning. I don't mind taking leadership. I like creating a vision. I like improving things. So if I take all those things, that's what leaders have. Those are the skills
Absolutely.
leaders have. And then where can that take me in my career? So, when
And you take all those things, and that's literally what you're doing now.
right, yep.
That's so
And
interesting.
so at the CT Center, we take that theory of Ikigai to the kids to try to help them think outside the box. Because like I was talking about my daughter, what does she see? She sees teachers. So, and I think in her kindergarten picture, when you do those cutesy pictures, and what do you want to be? She wanted to be a police officer, teacher. So what do they see, right? So, but not what skills those people have. It's what do they see? So they see doctors, they see nurses, they see teachers, they see cops. So
of course
nobody
that's
sees
what-
nobody sees the lineman.
No.
They see the trucker, but they see the truck, but not the trucker. They see So how can we then expose students to figuring out first of all your list, and then we'll fill in the details of what that job might look like. But again, too, I think that when we talk about again the big picture of why have we shifted from have to go to college culture to maybe college culture. College is a great option,
Absolutely.
but it's really finding your path, filling what those skills need to be, and knowing that it's always going to change because so many people are now into gig culture, where you might do this 3 days a week, you might do that 2 days a week, you might do this an hour, you might do this 4 hours a day. So I think kids are seeing that gig culture and seeing like, how can I again have the skills, that what am I good at to do these different gigs are going to then make me whole. And I think a lot of our local companies are doing the same thing. You guys started as truck driving. Then,
Yeah.
then so I think that if you take that gig and just expand it bigger, it's the same thing. How are we finding to make ourselves whole in a community, in an economy where there's lots of those gigs that kids can have.
Absolutely. So. And maybe that is something that they would really like and enjoy. I mean, I know people, younger people that love the autonomy of being an Uber driver. They can work when they want to, and they have a certain amount that they want to make every week. They work until they get that amount, and they're good, and they have the flexibility of it. And so those are opportunities that never existed to you and I growing up, because those were never available. But so I got to ask you a favor. Can you send that to me later on? What is that called? Ikigai?
Ikigai.
Ikigai. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'd love to check that out, and we'll make sure to put a link to that as well, because that's the whole point, is being able to kind of, talk about digging deep. That one deep there, and to have students be able to take a look at that, and then it makes you think a little differently about things that maybe you haven't thought about before.
And I think too, we've done a bad job communicating to our kids that their only pathway to success is to leave. And sometimes that's fantastic. I left my community and I'm not going back.
Yep.
So we need people to do that.
And we appreciate that. We appreciate you here. Right. You bring a lot of value to Escanaba.
But I think that, by going back to that, kids can't be what they can't see. We as a local community can stop telling our kids, or tell our kids who've left, hey, look at these opportunities that we have. We have large employers here.
Absolutely.
And we have lots of jobs that might be hidden. So I think that if we stop communicating that it sucks here, we'll stop exporting our kids, and then we can show them, if we can then stop communicating that it's bad here and communicate the positives and what careers there are, I think that the kids will stay. People will come back. One of our great assets in the UP is Invest UP, and they have a organization and a kind of a tool called Return North.
Yep. So
what that is they actually will go and try to recruit people who have grown up north, who understand the lifestyle that we want, or that people expect when they're here.
Sure.
And say, hey, maybe you have a job in Georgia. Here's the career opportunities that are available for you above the 45th parallel. Maybe think about coming back. That's
awesome.
an opportunity to try to recruit those people who've left that think that there's nothing here. Like, oh, really? I can work as a software developer in Gladstone, and have this opportunities for me. And back where I grew up with maybe the values that I want, or the lifestyle that I want, that I can't get in the metropolitan area.
Absolutely. I remember talking to somebody here recently that said our greatest export is our youth, and how. But I think as rural communities, I feel like we're doing a lot better at that, as holding our, giving our young people these different opportunities, or those opportunities might be, hey, you know what, you got to do an apprenticeship for a few years, get your experience, and then you can come back, kind of thing, or travel on the road a little bit and come back. But being able to really foster our youth, and you got 2 kids, right? 2, yeah. So I have kids as well, and something that scares the heck out of me, because I see this on different friends, and is my kids leaving and moving away for those opportunities. That's a fear, right? And I don't want that. Or maybe they move away to find themselves or whatnot, or get some experience. But I'd love to have them close to home, right? And I think that's important, to not migrate our kids outside of our community.
Let's just not do an active job of knocking our own community.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they choose to leave, then that's fine. We did our job to show them all the opportunities. But when we actively promote them, that their only opportunity to be successful is to leave, that's on us.
Yeah, we're hurting our own. We're hurting ourselves.
And what we're seeing, through Invest UP, is, again, you see some of that population data. Our population is growing above the age of 65. Not that that's bad. We love all people of all ages.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the amount of people we're going to be having to do jobs and to run the economy
is getting smaller.
So we've got to do something. I talk in Schoolcraft County. Some of those businesses 100% rely on those 65 plus people, because they'll come in at 4 o'clock in the morning and work for 2 hours, and then go and do pickleball or whatever. So we need those people too, but
Absolutely.
we need the full timers that are creating the base, and then those people who are part-time, retired, whatever it is, can come in and fill in the void. We can't solely rely on them, because they're going to age and and age out.
Absolutely. Something you mentioned a little bit ago was the work-based learning. And I was talking to a group of students the other day, and I said, okay, a show of hands, how many people have jobs, right? Going into summertime, there was only a handful of people, right? And it was a different school. And I said, why aren't you people working? I was like, they were all juniors and seniors. They're going into summertime. How important is that for a younger person, no matter what job it is, just to get some work experience?
Right. I think it's incredibly valuable. We have multiple students every year who go into work-based learning, whether it's at OSF just doing clinical rotation. I don't want to say just doing clinical rotation, doing clinical rotations.
I don't even know what that is.
So in our health occupations classes, the kids go and they rotate through emergency room, maybe different billing areas, ambulatory care, radiology, or imaging. They rotate through those
different
areas.
sectors of the healthcare side of things.
Yep. So we do that both at OSF Hospital and the Schoolcraft Memorial Hospital. So our students get to go in and see all those kind of things. And whether they answer after those opportunities, we also have kids in machine shops. We have kids in elementary schools. We have kids in high schools. We have kids in out on building sites. For all of our programs, they all have work-based learning opportunities. But whether they leave that opportunity and say, I want to do that for a living, or I don't, that's okay, because they've at least narrowed things down. But my fear is if they have a negative experience, they're going to shut that industry out of their mind.
Yep.
So if they go into a shop and they get sworn at and yelled at, and they have higher expectations than being a student, they might be like, "Meh, I'm not going to do that." So we always need to make sure we communicate clearly to our industry partners to, these are students. We're still selling them on the industry, or they're still figuring it out. So we can't expect to have 100% efficiency out of them.
No.
Even though they might be super proficient in our classes, they're still learning how to work on a job site.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And part of that, I think, is exploring those different careers too, because I know there's a handful of different things. Like I started at Burger King when I was 14 years old, and I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't like it, but I look at like the communication experience that I learned, and perhaps working at Burger King was the best communication class I've ever taken, because I had the headset on. I was introducing myself every time, taking orders, and I would literally talk for 8 hours, like literally the whole time. Yes, me. Yeah, seriously. Can you believe it? And I was young, right? But they're like, oh yeah, this kid can talk. Put the headset on him. He'll take orders. Welcome to Burger King. How can I help you? You know what I mean? I said that 1,000 times and taken orders, and then that was the old style before credit cards, if you can believe it. So it was cash only, and then you had to announce every order back to the back so they knew what was going on. But it's one of those things that I tell people. I was like, and a lot of people get blown away by that. Like, Burger King was some of your best work experience? I said, probably. It's one of the, and so embrace all the different jobs that you have. And even if you hate a job or you really don't like it, the skills that you develop within that job because of that job might be worthwhile your entire life. And so, give it a fair shake, right?
Yep. I look back at mine too, working with my dad. One of the things I learned was just how to deal with people, especially like people that are older than me. It's how do you communicate? How do you keep a conversation going with folks that are maybe older than you? How do you make them feel comfortable?
Absolutely.
All those things are incredibly valuable. How do you deal with people who may not have the same values as you or the same work ethic as you, and all those things. So like I said, whether they're working at a golf course in the summertime or whether they're working at a machine shop in town, those are all going to be super valuable.
Absolutely.
For their choices after high school.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I think a lot of people want to do what they absolutely love or like to do, and it's like, no, get in there and try new things, or you might find like you like to do something that you didn't realize. I remember me working in high school at a maintenance shop, changing out tires, doing oil changes and stuff, and I kind of like the autonomy of that, where you're kind of working at your own pace, and you bring a truck in, and you're doing and you're learning about all those different things. And I wouldn't want to do that now, but I still do it once in a while, to help out. But those are huge things,
and nobody can take those skills from you.
No, exactly.
So you can always do that no matter where you are in the world, right? So that's those are the kind of things we want kids to leave with, is those things that nobody can take from you. And one of the things we're trying to offer, as a state. We have the goal of 60 by 30, which is where 60% of the population is going to have a post-secondary credential of some type after by 2030.
That's awesome.
So one of the requirements, how the state works, right, is here's our goal. Now you
Yep.
go do this. So one of our requirements in CTE is we have to offer like 15% of our kids are supposed to receive a post-secondary credential. So
Okay.
that could be a welding certification. It could be a ASE certification.
Sure.
It could be a CNA certification. So one of the things, again, we try to tell kids that you should try that. One, because let's say we have 10 kids in the welding class go for their AWS certification, and 2 of them get it. Well, that's 2 that have more than everybody else in the class.
Absolutely.
So sets yourself apart. Nobody can take that from you. It says that you've met a certain standard.
Yep.
So so we're trying to get kids to find a value in that credential, because we still have those people who just say, "Oh, you're just a high school kid." Well, it's like, okay, I'm a high school kid, but I've got this, this, and this.
Well, exactly.
So like in our IT
I'm not
class,
just a high school
exactly
kid.
right.
Yeah.
So we got kids who are in our IT class who have Certiport credentials, who say that they can do.
Really?
This is my one area where I'm
in
probably
high
weakest.
school?
In high school, they have Certiport. They have A++ credentials.
Wow.
And then those can count in some colleges. Those count for college credits. So let's say that one is the credential. You can get a job with that credential, and then 2, some of those credentials count for college or count as like a waiver for a college credit.
Yeah. Wow.
So some community colleges in the state, if you have that A++, you go get college credit waived. So those are things, like you said, your auto
Shit,
skills
that's
that you had from your job, your
absolutely.
skills from Burger King. Nobody can take those from you.
No, exactly.
And you've proved yourself to a standard that
Yeah.
you can do a job.
Absolutely. And talking about like ASC credentials and stuff, I mean, those are the credentials that every dealership looks for.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You have
Yep.
ASC credentials, pretty much you can get hired at any dealership for stuff
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
I mean, that's
we
what
had
they
we had
require.
students working at the local dealership in town here, Riverside, and we had to have ASC student credentials for them to start, because you have to be I can't think of the proper word right now, but it's like a trainee level.
Yep.
At the state.
Sure.
So one of the directions we're moving into is from ASC to state level automotive service technician credentials, because the ASC will get you the state test, but our student certification levels don't equate to like an employee level.
Oh, sure.
So we're just going to go to straight to that state level, so that
state
kids can
level.
have that.
And those are actual tests that they got to take
Right.
at the Secretary of State
Yep.
to be able to get those
It's actually-
credentials
it's-
and licenses.
It's nice, but actually we can be a testing center right at our school. So we can have a computer set up dedicated for that purpose, and the kids don't have to leave our entity to get that.
They literally can do it right
And
there.
it costs $6. So where the ASC test is $42. So, and we're covering all those costs. So those kids they take those tests.
It's even a more valuable certification
Right. Yep.
because it's through the state of
State,
Michigan,
right.
So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
which is huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those credentials are big, and again, those things are transferable across industries. A CDL works for a person in the operators union. It works for a person in the electrical union. It
Or
works
in
for
California.
A person. Exactly right. So it works. So
New York,
those,
it doesn't matter.
those are international
Yep.
credentials.
Absolutely, and I think I think if there's one thing that COVID taught a lot of people is because I'll tell you what, the CDL program was full because all these people got laid off and different things. Is that having something to fall back on, guess what, is kind of imperative in today's day and age. That if you have some skill set, something that you can fall back on, if something happens, it's huge. Because what a lot of people realize is, what's more important than liking your job? Putting food on your table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw a lot of people recognize that during that. So something I talked about in the last podcast that's important to me, and I know it's important to you, is volunteering and kind of service to the community. And I think that's how we've got to know each other, honestly. But it's something that I'm a huge proponent of it, and I try to push people for it. Why is it important to you, and why should it be important to others?
We have an aging population, and it is in the organizations that we're members of, and that we volunteer of, even through our jobs. We find that people are aging out and stopping to volunteer. But what that does is that creates that sense of community and sense of purpose. And another thing, that when we engage youth, whether they're or anybody in the volunteer organization, give them a sense of purpose and they'll stay. So if we could, that's one of the reasons, so I'm a Ducks Unlimited person, along with all of the other things I volunteer in. But it gives me a sense of purpose. I feel like I'm creating value for people. I feel like I'm making society better through all the things that we do too. So when you're a youth and you're thinking about volunteering, or you're what's keeping you here? If you can volunteer and feel part of something bigger than you, you're more likely to stay, you're more likely to feel fulfilled. And all those organizations who are doing great things in our community, whether it's pregnancy services, whether it's Ducks Unlimited, whether it's Wells Lions Club.
Yeah.
They are screaming for people, and they offer an incredible amount of things that benefit society as a whole that they can't do without volunteers.
Yeah.
And in our small communities where everybody wears 1,000 hats, it'd be nice if we could pass some of those hats off to the younger people coming up. And it was interesting it was awesome at our last Ducks Unlimited banquet. We had a lot of younger folks that were members,
awesome.
which is good to see, because I was like, oh gosh, all these guys are wanting to be off because we're aging out.
I don't see the younger people around here.
And those people who are aging have been doing it for 30 years, and they're just like, I just want to retire and go do my things and not be tied down to something, But if you can find something that's bigger than you, that makes you fulfilled, doesn't necessarily pay you, it makes you feel good, makes you want to stay in an area, makes you feel part of something. We both didn't grow up here, but I'm sure the both of us, wherever you go, for good or for bad, you see people that you know and that you see.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why we stay here. Is my wife and I, my family stay here, is because we're known where we go. It makes us feel good. People are willing to help us. We're able to help other people, and when you can make that positive impact in society, it just makes us feel like better people. Makes us feel included in something. We're part of something bigger.
Absolutely. But that sense of community, and I'm slowly learning that, like, if you want to have a great community, you got to support those community events, and you got to be a part of that community, an integral part of that community. And I find I think we have a much bigger influence on younger people to push them to volunteer and to help out. And the other thing, and say someone, well, everyone likes to ask the question, what's in it for me, right? And if I could give one standpoint where I would not be talking to Trent right now if I didn't volunteer for Ducks Unlimited, right? Because we wouldn't have got to know each other like we have. And so if there is maybe a selfish bone in someone's body, well, guess what? You volunteer to help out someone else. You never know who you're going to be rubbing shoulders with, what opportunities are going to present themselves. And I've known people that have gotten phenomenal job opportunities because of some of the service organizations they're a part of, and they're like, man, I can't believe I wouldn't know what I would do with my life if it wasn't for, whether it's the Wells Lions Club or Ducks or any of the other great organizations that are around. But and like you said, they're all looking for people. I got volunteered to coach T-ball this year, and I'm like, I don't know much about. Well, no, you'll be fine. You know what I mean? Because it was like, okay, well, let's do it. And, granted, my kids were on the team too, but I wanted to be on the sidelines. I wasn't given that opportunity, but I was like, let's dive right in. Let's do it. And I think it's important for everyone to know that you have the skill sets to be able to help out and volunteer, and you never know what opportunities might present themselves just because of that.
Whenever we do anything, like going on a field trip or with anything with our kids, I always get on the bus and tell them you never know who your next boss is going to be.
Yeah.
So always pretend like the person you're talking to is either going to know your boss or going to be your boss.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly, how you present yourself in that T-ball field. It might be a student's parent or a student's uncle and be like, oh, I know that guy from his, and there's those connections.
Oh, exactly.
So again, when you're talking about volunteering, if you have a limited social network, limited social capital, those volunteering opportunities help to grow that outside of the people that you know.
Absolutely.
So that I know through my volunteering, I've all kinds of walks of life, financial planners, plumbers, auto wrecking places, all kinds of different walks of life people. And we've been able to all work off each other to help a greater goal, whether it be the purpose of the volunteer organization or just our own personal goals.
Absolutely.
So that's one way, one of the great ways to keep societies and places to volunteer and feel part of something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely. And that there is a level of fulfillment there. And if people haven't ever volunteered, like maybe they don't know what that feels like. But like you said, it's bigger than yourself. It's a much bigger organization than yourself, a bigger cause than yourself. And to be a part of it, to be a cog in that wheel, to be able to move that forward, I think is a huge deal. Is a huge deal. Well, one thing I like to ask, but your mentors growing up or motivation growing up, was there one piece of advice or a lesson that you learned younger that really has helped you throughout the years?
I think two things. So one, growing up with my dad, we went to lunch every day in the summertime with a group of his, like 9 buddies.
Yep.
They were all, bankers, lawyers, all through.
Really?
It was like the town godfather
Yeah.
of the olden days. So I went to lunch with them. I was the only kid. So I think that, and I had a blast every single time we went. They were just all great group of guys.
Yeah.
We had blue collar guys, we had, white collar guys, rich guys, poor guys. So I just think that was an awesome opportunity for me to engage with people from all walks of life, be able to create conversations with those people.
Absolutely. And they were a lot older than
They
you at
were all
this
in their
time.
60s, or there was people from their 40s to 65.
So just being able to talk to people
Yep.
30, 40 years
Exactly.
older than you,
Yep. And
that's huge.
So that's helped me feel more confident in my role. I started in administration younger in my role, younger in my life. So like people typically are, when I'm in the room with some people, they're like, you can't be the boss
You're
'cause
one of the
younger.
younger
I'm like,
guys in the
I
room,
am,
yeah.
So I think that's helped me just communicate with more people. I look back and that was a lot of fun, but I learned a lot through those opportunities. And then the other one, I always look back on, I made pallets for a company in town where I grew up that they made front ends for hot rods. So I made these pallets and then they put them on there and they shipped them away. So I remember one time I kept being late on getting the pallets to the guy. So the guy that I made them for, Stuart, one day he said, you're late again. I need those pallets. And I said, yeah, I didn't get them done. I had football. I had this. He's like, I don't need an excuse. I need the pallets. So I was like, so that kind of defined my life from there. Is like, I can't provide excuses. Like, okay, so we're just going to do it. So one of my probably
I don't need excuses.
I
need the pallets.
Exactly right. So, and one of the things that I have it on in my office, it's don't let it happen, make it happen. It's the same type of thing, right? Is like if I don't care why it's not happening, make it happen. If it's somebody else's job, fine, do it for them.
Yep.
So it's just easier to sometimes just do the work than to wait for somebody else to do it. Yeah. It's kind of where I live. So working with those different people and then getting told, I don't care why, I care that this didn't happen, has been life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I think that's great advice. It reminds me of one of my good buddies, Kent, always says, he says, make it a great day. Mm-hmm. No, don't have a great, make it a great day. You have the autonomy to decide how your day is going to be, and I always love that. Mm-hmm. All right, one last question. What legacy do you want to leave in this community? That was kind of a deep question.
Yeah. What legacy? That's tough. I guess just making things better than I found it. I hope that whenever I leave this role or whatever, whenever I retire, that I can say, yep, that's better now. And I hope that I can continue to do volunteering and just see that the world, that the program, that he saw things more than himself.
Yeah.
Just made the world a better place.
Yeah.
Wherever I am.
No, I love that, and I will tell you, I know your name gets tossed around all the time in a great way from a lot of different people I talk to in the trades and different things, and there's no doubt you are making this world a much better place, but making this community a much better place with you in it. So. Thanks again for being on the podcast today.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, Trent.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.